There are women who disappear so slowly, so quietly, that even they do not notice until one morning they catch their reflection in a window and realize they have been gone for years. Maren Calloway knew this better than most. The kitchen smelled of Maxwell House and burnt toast. October light came through the window above the sink, thin, pale, the kind of light that does not warm anything, only illuminates. Maren stood at the counter in her robe, both hands wrapped around her mug, watching the Henderson's oak tree drop its last leaves onto the lawn next door. She had been watching that tree for 11 years. She knew its seasons better than she knew her own. The envelope was already on the counter when she turned around. Gerald had left it there before he drove to the office. No note, just the envelope, cream-colored, embossed with the Whitmore Hotel logo in the upper left corner. She already knew what it was. The Ohio Valley Corporate Leadership Gala. Third year in a row, she opened it anyway, because that was what she did. She opened things Gerald left on the counter, handled them, filed them, responded on his behalf when he forgot, and then set the table for dinner. Inside, 2 tickets, one for Gerald Calloway, Regional VP, one for Mrs. Calloway, not Maren, not Margaret, Mrs. She set the envelope down. She poured the rest of her coffee into the sink. Before we go any further, if you are new here, take a moment right now and subscribe. These stories are written for a specific kind of listener, and if you have made it this far, you are probably exactly who this was made for. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, how old are you, and what time is it where you are right now? I read every single one. Now, back to Maren. She was 58 years old. She had a dentist appointment on Thursday, a casserole in the freezer she had been meaning to defrost for a week, and a drawer full of reading glasses she kept losing. This was her life now, and most days she did not think about the other one. Most days she was very good at not thinking about it. It was a Tuesday in October when Gerald had said it, not last October, the October of the second year, when she had mentioned, carefully, the way she had learned to mention things, that she had seen a posting at a small firm in Dayton. Civil litigation, entry-level, practically, but a door. He had looked up from his laptop. He had not been unkind about it. Gerald was rarely unkind. You were never really cut out for the big room, Maren, he had said. That's not a criticism. It's just who you are. He had gone back to his laptop. She had stood in the doorway of his home office for another moment, holding a dish towel, and then she had walked to the kitchen and finished washing the dinner plates. The basement stairs creaked on the third step. She knew which ones to avoid, had learned them the first winter here. She pulled the chain on the bare bulb above the utility room and stood in the orange light, looking at the shelf. The holiday wrapping paper, the dehumidifier Gerald had bought and never assembled, 3 banker's boxes stacked against the far wall. The bottom one had her initials on the side in her own handwriting. M.A.C. She had not opened it in 4 years. She stood there, one hand on the shelf, not moving. The basement smelled of concrete and old cardboard, and the particular cold of a house that sits on Ohio clay. Her breath made no mist, not quite cold enough for that. Not yet. Her fingertips rested on the lid. She did not lift it, not yet. She opened it on a Wednesday she did not plan to. She had gone down to find the extension cord for the porch lights. Gerald wanted the porch lights up before the gala weekend, because people from the office might drive past. Because appearances mattered, because they always mattered to Gerald in ways she had spent 11 years quietly servicing. She found the extension cord in the first box. She should have gone back upstairs. Instead, she stood there in the orange light and looked at the bottom box for a long time. Then she set the extension cord on the shelf. Then she pulled the box down. The lid was sealed with a single strip of packing tape that had gone brittle at the edges. It peeled back without resistance, as if it had been waiting. The leather portfolio was on top. Dark burgundy, the gold monogram had dulled slightly, but it was still there. M.A.C. She did not pick it up immediately. She looked at it the way you look at something that used to belong to a person you loved, someone no longer living, with recognition, with the specific grief of things that did not have to end. She picked it up. The leather was cool and smooth, and it fit in her hands the way it always had, the weight of it exactly right, and something moved through her chest. Not a feeling she could name cleanly, more like a frequency. Something below language. She unzipped it, the bar admission certificate. The handwritten note from Carol Whitfield, her first winning client. You gave me my life back. I hope someone does the same for you someday. The newspaper article, folded in quarters, Chicago litigator wins landmark employment case. There was a photograph, she was 44 in it. She was standing at a podium, and she was not smiling. She was mid-sentence, one hand raised, and she looked like a woman who had never once in her life apologized for taking up space. She sat down on the cold concrete floor with her back against the shelf and held the portfolio in her lap and stayed there until her legs went numb. She did not cry. That surprised her. She had expected to cry. Instead, she felt something she recognized from the old days, from the weeks before a major case, from the hours before a deposition, a cold, clean settling, like a thermostat clicking off, like a room that has finally reached the right temperature and simply holds it. The phone call came on Thursday afternoon. She almost did not recognize the voice at first. 11 years was a long time, and people's voices change in 11 years, drop lower, shed certain enthusiasms. But the cadence was the same, precise, unhurried, the voice of a woman who never used two words when one would do. Maren Calloway, the voice said, I have been trying to find you for 6 months. Diana Reeves. Maren sat down at the kitchen table. Outside, the oak tree across the street stood bare and still against a white sky. Diana, she said. I am going to the gala on Saturday, Diana said. I think you should know some things before you walk into that ballroom. I think you should know them soon. The kitchen was very quiet. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed on the street outside, and its headlights swept briefly across the ceiling even though it was still afternoon. The days were getting short now, the light retreating earlier each evening, the world contracting. Tell me, Maren said, before we continue, if this story is speaking to something you recognize, something you have carried quietly, take a moment and leave a like. It tells me you are here, and it means more than you know. Now, where were we? Diana told her. It took 22 minutes. Maren did not interrupt once. She sat with her hand flat on the kitchen table, and she listened the way she had been trained to listen. For what was said, for what was not said, for the shape of the thing underneath. When Diana finished, the kitchen felt smaller than it had 22 minutes ago, or perhaps Maren felt larger. She was not sure yet which one it was. Saturday, Maren said. Saturday, Diana confirmed. Neither of them said anything else for a moment. Then Maren asked the question she had not asked anyone in 11 years. The question she had packed in a burgundy portfolio and sealed in a banker's box and buried under holiday wrapping paper in a basement utility room in Ohio. What do you need from me? What Diana needed was simple, and it was devastating. And it was exactly the kind of thing Maren had spent 11 years pretending she no longer knew how to do. Documentation, pattern, sequence, the architecture of a lie built slowly enough that no single brick looks wrong until you step back and see the whole structure. Gerald's company was about to honor him for a regional restructuring initiative that had saved the logistics division $4.3 million over 18 months. It had been presented as his vision, his strategy, his leadership. The award citation even used the word pioneering. Diana had received a call 2 weeks ago from a woman named Sylvia Chen, 34, operations analyst, 11 years at the company, the actual author of the restructuring framework, who had documentation going back to the initial proposal meeting, emails, drafts with her name in the metadata. A presentation Gerald had forwarded to the executive committee with the file properties quietly scrubbed, but not quietly enough. Sylvia had gone to HR. HR had done what HR does when the man in question is 3 weeks from a public award and a significant bonus. Nothing, less than nothing, they had suggested she consider whether she was remembering the collaboration correctly. Sylvia had nowhere left to go. Diana did, and now, it turned out, so did Maren. They worked for 2 days at Diana's kitchen table in Bexley, a neighborhood of wide lawns and old oaks and houses that had been paid for by decades of serious work. Diana's kitchen smelled of strong coffee and printer ink, and the faint cedar of the closet down the hall where she kept her case files. It was the smell of a working life, and breathing it made something in Maren's sternum ache with a sweetness that was almost unbearable. Sylvia drove up from Dayton on Friday morning. She was small and precise, and she shook Maren's hand with both of hers and did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, Diana told me who you are, who you were. A pause. I looked you up. Maren set down her coffee. The Whitfield case. Sylvia said, I read the transcript in law school. The three of them sat around Diana's table and built the case the way Maren had once built every case, chronologically sourced, cross-referenced, airtight. Maren's hands remembered what to do before her mind caught up with them. She organized the email chain. She identified the 3 moments of decisive misattribution. She drafted the 2-page summary that any board member could read in 4 minutes and understand completely. It was the best 4 hours of work she had done in 11 years. She did not say this out loud. Saturday arrived the way important days sometimes do, quietly, in ordinary clothes. The sky over Columbus was flat and gray, the air carrying the bite of coming November. Maren showered and dressed alone. Gerald was already downstairs, on the phone with someone from the office, pacing the living room in his tuxedo with his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. She had brought the burgundy portfolio up from the basement. It sat on the bathroom counter while she dressed. She did not look at herself while she got ready. She focused on each thing as she did it, deliberately, the way she used to prepare for court. She came downstairs at 6:45. Gerald was still on the phone. He glanced up. Then he looked up again, the phone dropping slightly from his ear, whatever he had been saying trailing off mid-sentence. His expression moved through something she could not fully name. It was not admiration exactly. It was closer to the look of a man who has just discovered that the room he has been living in is considerably larger than he thought. He recovered quickly. Gerald always recovered quickly. Ready? He said. Yes, Maren said. She picked up her clutch from the entry table. Inside it was a folded copy of the 2-page summary and Diana's business card. She did not look back as she walked out the door. The Whitmore Hotel Grand Ballroom smelled of warm bread rolls and expensive cologne, and the particular electricity of people performing their best versions of themselves. Round tables, dressed in white linen, stretched across a floor that could have held a small ice rink. Crystal caught the chandelier light and threw it in slow arcs across the ceiling. A string quartet played something forgettable near the bar. Maren accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing server and stood beside Gerald as he worked the room, his hand occasionally finding the small of her back, a gesture so habitual she doubted he felt it anymore. She smiled when she was smiled at. She answered questions about the HOA newsletter with the precise amount of warmth required to end the conversation quickly. She watched the room. Diana was already there, far table, near the window, a woman in charcoal gray with the stillness of someone who had spent decades in rooms where everything depended on knowing when to move and when to wait. They did not acknowledge each other. Sylvia was not in the room. She did not need to be. The program began at 8. The executive director of the Ohio Valley Business Association took the podium, silver-haired, practiced, the kind of man who considers a good microphone voice a form of character. He welcomed the room. He thanked the sponsors. He spoke for 11 minutes before anyone was honored for anything. Gerald's award was 4th on the program. Maren sat beside him at the head table and watched the first 3 presentations with her hands folded in her lap and her clutch beside her plate. The summary was folded inside it. Diana had arranged for copies to reach 3 specific people before the evening began. The company's board chair, who was seated 2 tables back, the editor of the Columbus Business Journal, who was covering the gala, and the head of the company's audit committee, who had not known, until 48 hours ago, that there was anything to audit. All 3 of them were in this room. All 3 of them had read 2 pages. And now, the MC said, our final honoree of the evening. Gerald straightened in his chair. Maren felt it beside her. The small animal alertness of a man about to be seen. The Regional Executive of the Year Award recognizes visionary leadership. The board chair stood up. It was not a dramatic gesture. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood, pushed back his chair with a sound that cut cleanly through the MC's sentence and said, I need to pause the program for 1 moment. My apologies. His voice was the voice of a man accustomed to being listened to, and the room listened. What followed was not a scene. It was quieter than a scene. It was a series of quiet, corporate, devastating words spoken by 3 different people over the course of 8 minutes, while the string quartet sat frozen by the bar and the servers stopped moving and Gerald's face went through 5 distinct phases, the last of which was the one Maren recognized. The same expression he had worn for 11 years whenever something was happening that he could not control and could not explain and could not wait out. He turned to look at her. She met his eyes. She did not look away. She did not speak. She held his gaze with the same stillness she had held across deposition tables 30 years ago. The stillness that said, "I have read everything. I am prepared for everything. And there is nothing you can say in this room that I have not already accounted for." His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Diana had crossed the room quietly and now stood one step behind Maren's chair. Not intervening, just present. A woman bearing witness on behalf of another woman who had been invisible for 11 years. In a room full of people who were only now beginning to understand what they had not seen. Gerald did not receive his award that evening. The board chair used the word review. The audit committee chair used the word process. The business journal editor used neither word because he was already typing. Sylvia Chen's name appeared in the Columbus Business Journal the following Tuesday morning, above the fold, in a story about the restructuring initiative and its actual origins. The photograph they ran was from an internal company presentation. Sylvia at a whiteboard, mid-sentence, one hand raised, looking like a woman who had never once apologized for taking up space. Maren read the article at her kitchen table, with both hands around her coffee mug. The October light came through the window above the sink. The Henderson's oak tree stood bare across the street, stripped and still, and somehow more itself without its leaves, more plainly, honestly, what it had always been. She had called a Dayton firm on Monday morning. They had asked her to come in. The burgundy portfolio was on the kitchen table beside her coffee. She opened it one more time and read Carol Whitfield's handwritten note. "You gave me my life back. I hope someone does the same for you someday." She folded it carefully and put it in her coat pocket. Then she picked up her keys. Some reckonings do not announce themselves. They arrive quietly, dressed in the ordinary clothes of a Tuesday, and by Wednesday, everything is different. Maren Calloway had waited 11 years for her Wednesday. She just did not know it was coming, dressed like a cream-colored envelope with her name missing from it, left on a kitchen counter by a man who had never understood that the most dangerous thing in any room is a woman who has stopped explaining herself. And now I want to ask you something, and I mean this sincerely. Have you ever stayed somewhere longer than you should have? A job, a relationship, a version of yourself, because leaving felt more dangerous than staying? Tell me in the comments. Not because I am asking you to perform pain, but because someone reading your words tonight needs to know they are not the only one. If this story found you at the right moment, leave a like and subscribe. News stories go up twice a week, and every one of them is written for women who were told they had already used up their share of the story. You have not.